stream up and then somebody finds something that you weren't ready for, and it's like, oh,
yes.
All right. Looks like we're seeing our competitors on the screen now, shuffling up.
So
we got Stephen on the left and Jonathan on the right.
Yeah, so Stephen, he's a Melbourne local. I've seen him at a lot of SOAR championships. Oh, yeah, okay, cool. So, all right. So you guys are going to see this, but a lot of players in Stephen's group, they have this. So it's a menthol type inhaler thing that helps them clear their nose. So that's what it is. The first time I saw it, we just had this one locals where like 5 guys just had those stuck in their nose. I was like, what the hell's going on here? And they're like, oh, you want to smell? And it's like, okay. And it's like, it's like it's a menthol thing, yeah. It just like helps clear the nose and keeps you a little bit more awake. So yeah, so I guess this is their pre-game routine. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find a lot of players have like a kind of like niche little thing that they do to help them prepare or concentrate before a game?
Well, obviously everyone is different and they live a life outside of playing cards. So everyone's got different backgrounds. Everyone has different ways that they live their life. Some people might have a coffee, some people might have an energy drink, some people might have this. So yeah, like there's definitely a lot of personal comforts that people have, and like I've got my own, and we're here to enjoy the games, but otherwise people live lives on their own. But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of people have a lot of interesting hobbies and other interests as well. So yeah, so just explain that for the camera in case you guys are wondering what's happening with that. First time I definitely was surprised about it as well. So I would not be surprised if between rounds you see him clear the nose a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like both players are shuffling up here. I find when I'm waiting for my game, I just sit there. I can shuffle my deck for like hours on end. Just like the repetitive motion is just a nice way to pass the time.
The shuffling part is not too bad. It's like when your decks are prepared and then you're waiting for the TO to just like, don't start playing yet, don't start playing yet, don't start playing yet. And it's that awkward like sitting down and just kind of looking at each other, and if you don't know each other, you don't really have much small talk, and it's like, yeah, okay.
So looks like they may have done the deck list checks already. Both of those are face down.
Okay, so let's talk about this matchup. So
let's.
Ruby Sapphire, we know the usual game plan. Assuming that Jonathan is playing Sapphire Steel, because we have been mistaken a couple of times.
Yes, we have
this weekend.
Look like a couple of keys.
Assuming this is the case, it means that Jonathan Lamb is not playing an overly aggressive strategy, which means that it's not it won't be a race for Jonathan to press a lore advantage early on. So he's not going to be aggroing like the Amber or the Amethyst decks are going to be playing.
I think there's kind of 2 ways that I've seen this. Looks like they're doing the deck check now. So there's 2 ways that I've seen this sort of Sapphire Steel build. One of them is quite item-based, where you try and ramp up quickly and then get your Lucky Dimes and your Tamatoas out on the field and just try and win the game in like chunks of sort of 4 or 5 lore. And then there is another way to play it where you sort of go more character-based, and that's where a lot of the ward characters like your Alice and you see Wendy Darling, you see the 6-cost Ariel, which we haven't seen this weekend, but it's got ward. It quests for 2, but if you have more items than your opponent, it quests for 5. So that in combination with Lucky Dime can win the game very quickly. And it looks like we're getting some of the deck lists up here. So we've got Steven's deck list. Looks like we do have the Sisu package in here, and we've got the Tamatoas. So this is quite a traditional looking Ruby Sapphire list. And then, I think the question marks are really around this Sapphire Steel list. This is I think the only Sapphire Steel list we've seen all weekend, and haven't seen a lot of it in top 64.
I think we saw one play out around round 5-ish of day 1, I think.
Right, yep.
Yes, I think it might have been playing into... might have been playing against an Amber deck, but we'll have a look at what's in his strategy. So
and we are seeing the whole new world. So that's this is kind of the more and we got the 2 Lucky Dimes even. So this is kind of the older build that I think is still quite powerful. And we've got Argus Cyclops. That is not a card I've ever seen in competitively. We've got Aerial Treasure Collector. So
we got the Giant Fairy, four copies of that.
There is
Simba Future King.
some wild cards in this deck.
Twinfire. Okay, yeah, so Twinfire is a card that I've had my own for a little while. So
Yeah.
it is a 2-cost action that will deal 2 damage to a character, and you can discard an additional card from your hand to make it deal an additional 2 damage to another character. So it deals a lot of damage for the amount of ink that you have to pay for it, but obviously you're sacrificing card in hand in order to make that happen as well. So it's a tempo play that that converts additional card advantage into extra damage on the field. So yeah, it's if you can make the trade, sometimes it's what you need to do in order to keep the board stabilized. Obviously, in this matchup, not going to be relevant at all.
Yeah, probably not going to see. And that card might just get cycled with the whole new world.
Yeah, chunks of 2 damage are not relevant in this matchup. Ruby, Sapphire.
Yeah,
not really playing too many weenies.
So with the Ruby Sapphire, I think the game plan is the same game plan usually. You want to sort of ramp up to about 8 ink and then start developing your threats. And I think this is not a bad matchup at all for Ruby Sapphire because your things like your Tamatoa, even your dragons, these all have quite a lot of willpower. So the steel package, which is good at dealing sort of direct damage in often 2, 3, 4, 5, something like this, to deal 8 can be quite a handful. So yeah, I think this is going to be a top matchup for Jonathan. But on the flip side of that, Jonathan's got quite a few ward characters in their deck. So apart from Be Prepared, those are not easy for this Ruby Sapphire list to remove. So yeah, if Jonathan can get some items going early and get these aerials down on turn 6 or on the 6 ink turn, they might be able to just run away with the game because there's not a lot of removal that Red-Blue has targeted at these ward characters.
Yes, I think definitely it really comes down to who has a smoother ramp up. Definitely you're looking for Zelda to Azurite Sea on turn 2. Tipo is a runner-up for turn 2, but when you get to that 4 ink turn, what happens after you play the Grand Matala or after you play the How Far Will I Go, that's where you can really have a differential in terms of how much ink is available and how much cards in hand is available. And that's going to really dictate the ability for both players to play into each other in the following turns where they are swinging backwards or forwards into each other with 8 to 10 ink available. And you have like a whole bunch of big characters coming down. So that's going to be what I think is going to occur. Realistically, this is probably going to go to a best of 3. I think that the games are probably tight enough where we'll probably see 1 and 1 and then probably go to a third game. And definitely these are going to be long games. So we are working for the full 75 minutes for this round probably.
Quite likely. I think the game, a lot of it will also be dictated by the Sapphire Steel player. I think if they are able to sort of get their ramp down early, shrink their hand, and then play their whole new world and refill, if the Sapphire Ruby player hasn't managed to ramp up as quickly yet, then you can get a big ink advantage, but you don't have the downside with the whole new world because you get the big ink advantage, your opponent hasn't been able to convert their cards into ink yet, and then you both draw 7, so your hand sizes are the same again. That can really give you a lot of control over the game on that timing of the whole new world when that comes out.
True, and also I guess one other side thing to mention. So Ruby and Sapphire has a great ability to draw cards with its Haram and its Tamatoas and its Popsicles, and it's able to cycle those. Whole New World is an alternative win condition for Jonathan because if Steven draws a whole bunch of cards, Jonathan may be able to push him over the edge with a couple of very strategic time Whole New Worlds. Yeah,
that's not a win condition you see very often, but it is not impossible that the Ruby Sapphire player runs out of cards. And in Lorcana, if you have to go and draw a card from your library, which you have to do at the start of every turn, if there's no cards left in your library when you go to draw one, you lose the game. So that is not out of the bounds of reality that we see that in this matchup.
So to be honest, if there was any match this weekend in which we would see a player deck out, I think this is probably the matchup.
Yes.
Like you have a go long deck and also another deck that can go long, as well as force the other player to draw. So, yep.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like myself, I'm a Ruby Sapphire player, and I'm sort of jealous of the Sapphire Steel decks. It's like you get to run the Fishbone Quill, you get to run all these greedy ramp cards, and then you just refill your hand with the Whole New World. And one more thing on that, the Whole New World with Ruby Sapphire, you've got a lot of cards like Visions of the Future, Grand Matala, and these are good at sort of filtering through your deck and finding your high value cards. So if you spend a turn, play a couple of Visions of the Future, find some high value cards that you want to play on the following turn, and then your opponent just plays a whole new world, and you have to put those into your discard, that can really disrupt your game plan. So that's something that we might see here. And yeah, I think I would generally like the Ruby Sapphire in this matchup, but Sapphire Steel definitely has some timings and some disruptive plays that they can apply.
And it looks like we are off. Okay, so
into the alteration process.
Yeah, so we know what Ruby Sapphire wants. So Ruby Sapphire wants to pick up Popsicle, wants to pick up Sail, as I see, probably wants to hold on to Grammatala. As for Jonathan, I would imagine that the Sail as I see is probably what he's chasing.
Pretty similar game plan, yeah. We might see the Ruby Sapphire player prioritizing just trying to get how far I'll go. You really want to get ramped up as quickly as possible before the whole new world comes out the first time. So you really want to get as many cards into your inkwell as quickly as you can on the Ruby Sapphire side, because every card that you have to discard through a whole new world is potential lost value.
True, that is the case. But sometimes it's a little bit hard to know, just because there are times where you're just going to have uninkable. So look, you might think your opponent's not going to play a whole new world because they still got 4 cards in hand, but you know, you didn't realize that, hey, 3 of them are just uninkable, so you kind of have to do it now in order to you know, get a little bit further. So sometimes it does occur. I guess it's a little bit less prevalent when you have access to Sapphire, simply because you have access to Tipo. So
and Fishbone Quill as well, if you run that.
And Fishbone Quill. So just in the situation where, look, you've got a whole bunch of inkables, hey, you got to play the Tipo, and the Tipo can help you put it there. So yeah. And I think
looks like Jonathan might be altering 4 back. Yeah, they're both having to think quite hard on this one.
Does that mean Steven is starting? He's playing first?
Looks that way, yes. I think so. I think Steven's on the play for this one.
All right, cool. And Jonathan is, cool, distributing his cards back into his deck and shuffling it up. Yep. Cool. Make sure he's sufficiently randomized his deck for this.
Yeah, I think as far as matchups go, being on the play versus on the draw in these kind of slower ramp-based matchups is not as important as in sort of some of these tempo-based matchups.
Honestly, I can see it going either way. To be honest, like, there's probably certain matchups where like having the extra card just like gives you an extra set of options, right?
Yeah, if you're trying to ramp quickly in particular, having that extra fuel in your hand can be beneficial.
This allows you to, like, quote-unquote, ink, like, make better quality inking decisions. Yep.
And
he just,
Jonathan. So it was Sapphire Steel on the play. So we saw Pleakley go into the inkwell. Another one of these set 6 cards that I've experimented with a bit. I didn't quite find a home for it in Ruby Sapphire, but yeah, Jonathan's clearly found some nice use cases for it.
Maleficent and goes to the Popsicle. Pretty standard.
So pretty nice start there for Steven. And Jonathan, turn 2.
Do we see the turn 2 Azurite Sea? We
got another Pleakley in hand. So Pleakley on the Tipo can be really nice because you can then turn Tipo into ink as well, which is what you want to do in a lot of these slower matchups. And yeah, difficult to see what Jonathan's got in the hand here.
Yeah. So Pleakley is the card that we don't see too often. My understanding, it's a free cost character card that allows you to put one of your characters into your...
One of your characters into your inkwell, correct. So it's sort of anti-tempo, but then it turns things like your Tipo, which you may not care about the 1/2 body on the board for the long term. So if you can just turn that into ink, that's essentially drawing a card for you.
Yeah, also, my understanding with one of the rules for Lorcana is if you have a card that's shifted on top of another card and you put it into your inkwell, both cards actually go into your inkwell. Yep.
Same if that gets bounced back to your hand, you get both cards. So, and there's the Tipo. So I think Steven will be quite happy with the way that this early game's played out. I don't think Argus, which is a 4/1, that quest for 1, is really targeted at this matchup. But we may see Argus quest here and get put with Pleakley into the inkwell. And then we've got the Pete. That's another card that's very powerful against Ruby Sapphire. If you can prevent them from playing any actions on their turn, that can really disrupt what they're trying to do. All right, so Jonathan just deciding what to ink, inking the Pete. Well, yeah, this always feels bad, inking Pete against Ruby Sapphire, but when you need the 3rd ink, then yeah, there's not a lot you can do. And we've also got the Fishbone Quill, so...
And that's this is a little bit of weakness going first. You just sometimes that one extra card would have just
very small.
Yeah,
I can't quite tell if Jonathan's got the whole new world in hand. So if they do, they'll be happy to just put as many cards in their inkwell as quickly as possible and then play a whole new world to refill. Is that yeah, this is a really interesting build from Jonathan.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what are we in store for. Like, I haven't really.
Yeah, I think I see a Pyros in hand, which is a card that is amazing in limited because it can challenge and then reset another character. So might be going for sort of a combo deck where you can play your Aerial and your Pyros, and then if you quest with your Aerial, your Pyros challenges, you can ready your Aerial, and then it's one of the few cards that does let you quest again. So, all right, so we got Simba being deployed by Jonathan. I think Jonathan's looking for a whole new world here. So Simba's going to draw a card and then discard a card.
One of the interesting things about Pyros is when it does challenge another character, it allows it to ready another character.
Yes.
But it's one of the very few cards that allows you to ready another card.
And quest.
And that character may quest as well. So
Yeah.
it does lend to some very interesting combo strategies later on in the late game.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that from Jonathan. So I think Steven's going to have to play around that. So we have Tipo challenging into the Argus. And yeah, that was an interesting one. Jonathan played the Simba, but did not draw a card. So I think the thought that Jonathan had there was they had two cards in hand. One of them's a whole new world. The other one's inkable. So probably regardless of what Jonathan gets off the top of their deck here, they're going to ink that first card in hand. They're probably going to fishbone the second card. And then they will play the whole new world. Whereas if you draw a card, you just reduce your library size by 1, and it's probably going into your inkwell anyway.
Yeah, not sure. Honestly, it's in my mind. There's kind of no reason not to draw a card, but yeah, here we go.
And there's the Pyros. So on its own, it just quests for 1. It's not a particularly big threat, and particularly with Ruby Sapphire, I think they don't have to put themselves in a position where they're exerting characters before they can deal with this.
Interesting thing about Pyros. So when it is also not limited to once a turn as well. So if there are multiple characters that it needs to challenge, it can constantly ready itself.
That's right. It can ready itself up.
Potentially, if you are able to give it, resist, it can challenge multiple smaller units. Just plow its way right through it. And it's also a reasonable body at 5 strength and 4 willpower for 5 ink. So it's actually pretty reasonable in that regards as well. So yeah, it's not a free target for the Maui. So it's able.
Yeah, that's right. It will trade with the Maui, but I don't think Steven would be too unhappy about that because they've just put how far I'll go, and there's probably a few more actions in the discard already. So if Steven can retrieve those and use the how far I'll go to ramp up, but there's the Pete.
And the Pete locks it in. So Maui's all he's got is a challenge next turn. He
can challenge, can fetch the action, but will not be able to play it. And there's the Hiram. Will Jonathan probably won't banish the Fishbone Quill this turn.
No,
they may consider doing that in the future.
Around for a little while, yep.
Yeah, that's
because he's got a whole new world, right? So you just, So you Fishbone, stack up your inkwell as much as you can, and then you
banish
world,
it.
And then after that, you can Hiram.
So yeah, Jonathan's probably trying to get a lot of it, maybe up to like 12, 13, 14 ink with this deck, because there seems to be a lot of combos that you can pull off once you get to that point. And particularly with the double lucky dime, you can do all sorts of things with that build.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, it effectively allows you to convert a whole bunch of extra ink into just like extra speed for lore as well. So
yeah, which I think Ruby Sapphire used to do that game plan, but yeah, particularly with set 6, it's really pushed the pace of the meta forward a little bit, and you can't run these greedy builds where you're just trying to ramp up with some of the older cards like Chicha. So yeah, we just see our first quest of the game, I think, or second. I think it's 1 apiece at the moment. I think we did see Argus quest earlier. And there's the Maui Hero to All, so we got 2 Mauis on the board briefly there. Hero to All challenging into the Argus. Yeah, I think Jonathan identifies that it's completely safe to... with the Pyros. It's totally fine to lose the Pyros. This is not a matchup where the Ruby Sapphire player is going to leave things on the board exerted for the Pyros to challenge.
True, and it doesn't seem like it's got too much of a value right now. Like, I don't think it really had too many targets against Steven's deck. its only relevant targets probably is like the T-pose and the Grammars early on.
Yeah,
and after that phase, really not a super major need to keep
just there as a singer, so pretty happy to send that into the discard. So we got Grab Swords. This is one of these cards that, again, used to be played in almost every Steel deck, but it just hasn't found a home in a lot of the newer decks.
This deck's interesting. So one of the advantages of Fishbone Quill is that you can get away with playing significantly more uninkables because the Fishbone Quill can put them in and put them down. So actually, you can get kind of greedy with some of your cards, and like it was as we were saying this weekend, grab your swords. It's a good amount of
very good card,
damage dealing spell. So yeah,
I think we may see it into the Inkwell here, though. It's probably not the right matchup for it. It's more of an anti-aggro tool.
Yep.
So Jonathan, inking the vision. So they must have something in their hand that they want to play. And there's another whole new world. So sending Steven's hand into the discard. And let's see what Jonathan can find. I think the card they're looking for is probably Lucky Dime and Aerial Treasure Collector. There is a couple of Be Prepareds in the discard pile. So if Jonathan wants to quest or wants to sing here, Steven will be able to retrieve one of those. So yeah, Jonathan, the strategy seems to be just build up quite a big stack of items, get a lot of ink going, and then probably later in the game deploy something like Aerial Treasure Collector, Tamatoa, and then tap that dime and just get a lot of lore in big chunks.
Yes, 100%. And being able to remove items is something that literally Ruby and Sapphire deck cannot do. So Jonathan can just play with knowledge that his items are safe. If you get a Lucky Dime out there, it's sticking around.
Yeah, there is Hideaway, which is a card that has been teched in as a one-of in a lot of these Ruby Sapphire lists. Not everyone's running it. It's more to deal with the locations that people struggle with. But yeah, it's I'm not sure I've seen it in Steven's hand at this point. And that might be one of the reasons Jonathan's running 2 Lucky Dimes. If your first one gets dealt with in some way, you might want that second one. And yeah, that's just what this Quill allows you to do. You can run these greedy, expensive, uninkable cards and not worry about them clogging up your hand, because in the wrong matchups, you can just put them into your Inkwell.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So it breaks a lot of conventions that we are currently seeing in decks, and that's why this deck is such an interesting game to watch. And
yeah,
I think it must be so new. If you didn't really know what's going on, and yeah, you just you face up into this, you might be super confused. Like, what's the line of play here?
Yeah,
right?
What is the win condition? What are they ramping into?
So none of Jonathan's characters are really any threats other than
the Hiram. Yep.
So I guess Maui can challenge you challenge the Hiram, of course, right?
I think you challenge the Hiram and then fetch a Be Prepared. Even if you don't want to run it out this turn, I think that might be the line that we see. But yeah, Steven's got a lot of cards in hand, so I do see a small Sisu as well, which might play into the Hiram. All right, so Ice Block. Yep. Steven building up their items.
He's building up items as well, so
might even see some ramp here. Steven might be feeling like they're falling a bit behind, and their opponent has 9 ink. They're only inking up to 7 on this turn, I think.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think if you can slowly, you don't necessarily have to build up your ink super fast. Mm-hmm. At this stage, I think both players are still kind of feeling themselves out. Obviously, Zelda Azurite Sea will cycle you into whatever you need, so you can just ink a little bit more stuff.
And there is the McDuck's Manor. That's a card we've been seeing a lot of in some of these Ruby Sapphire successful decks. So we may see that come out after the Be Prepared. I think running it out at this point, it's going to take... there's only, 4 or 5 strength on the board, so we might just see that get run out. But yeah, I think the Sisu, deal with the Hiram, turn off the draw engine, that makes a lot of sense. And then how much ink have we got? 4. There is the Mana. So we've been seeing so much of that card. We've seen Din deploy it to great success. And yeah, it's just a handful for a lot of decks to deal with. I'm not sure whether Jonathan's running a card like Hideaway or Emperor Kuzco, just to send that into the Inkwell. But I don't think Jonathan will be too nervous. It's been a pretty slow clock that has been set up.
That's the advantage of playing the deck that's a little bit off meta, that you can have practice against the meta decks, but certainly other players won't have any experience playing into yours. So he's probably faced definitely like at least 2 to 3 Ruby Sapphire decks.
This weekend, at least. There's been a lot of it around, and particularly we've seen how many of those have made the top 64. So as you get into the later brackets and the top end of Swiss, I'm sure Jonathan's had 3, possibly 4 or 5 matchups into this.
So he should be reasonably familiar with this matchup, but Steven has to wing it. I don't think his testing group at home or at the store were testing this, so this is completely out of the blue. He's really taken by surprise. So he has to kind of just focus on his core game plan of cool, I'm not sure exactly what I'm playing into. I could probably assume he's got some important cards, and I just have to play my base solid game plan to just gain lore and just play efficiently and not overextend too much. There are certain cards that you might intuitively play around, and then you forget that's it's not really a thing. So you might not want to overextend on board, but then you realize, oh wait, this deck can't play Be Prepared, so it's actually okay to play really wide on board.
And so there's the Tinkerbell, which deals 1 to the Maui, and I think we just saw that
Tinkerbell. That Tinkerbell will deal 2 to everything when it enters play.
Deals 1 to everything on entry.
Yep. And then when it challenges successfully, it will then deal additional damage.
I didn't quite catch it, but I think we might have seen the Twin Shot come out there as well. So that's 2 lore for our Ruby Sapphire player. And it looks like... Did Jonathan just quest there? So not worrying about the clock that this man is representing. I think they just want to put their foot on the gas and go up to 4 to 2 is the count that I've got at the moment. So we're seeing Sail. So Steven's in a tricky spot here.
So admittedly he does have a mana, but he doesn't have really any board presence.
Yeah. And Jonathan, look at all that ink in that inkwell. I'm counting 10, I think 11 even. So once they do find this dime, or both dimes even, that would be ideal, I think, then they will be able to put them to great use. So I think that's the read that Jonathan's got, or maybe just wants to try and deal with the McDuck's mana all in one go, so there's not a lot of point putting 4 damage onto it. I think valuing the lore and just trying to win the race is the game plan. And this Ruby Sapphire deck is not an aggressive deck. It doesn't usually win the game quickly. But if Steven can, I'm not sure how many manas are in their list, but if they could get another one down, then that clock 4 lore per turn is starting to look much scarier.
True, but if Steven doesn't fill the board up with some amount of
there's the
board presence, he's still going to struggle. So, all right, wow, two Chromacons. Vital Spheres. And so he's pretty prepared if Jonathan does exert any of his characters.
So there's 2 Be Prepareds in the discard there. One of them went into the discard earlier, but the Maui Shark was able to retrieve it, so Jonathan would have known that was in hand. I think Jonathan's still just digging for the lucky dime.
So I think he's currently on 11 at the moment. So he spends 4 of them on Hiram.
4 Hiram.
Send that away. Draw 2.
Yeah, Jonathan's just looking for these key cards. And I do see the Tamatoa in hand, so we might see that come out. Steven does have...
Short. I think he needs to ink 1 more to play Tamatoa.
Yep, I think you are correct. And we may see at some point this Fishbone getting banished in order to draw some cards. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that in the next few turns. There's the Tamatoa. Yep, probably going to fetch a Fortisphere, and then we might see... Look at all those cards in the discard pile. This is what happens when you're playing...
certainly cycled for a lot.
Yeah, 2 whole new worlds. You end up with millions of cards in your discard pile. So we may see the Fishbone Quill activated here just to get the Fortisphere out. And that's, again, just what this Sapphire Steel list can do. When you're running a whole new world and you're drawing 7 cards with a single card, you can just ramp greedily and not have to worry about it. So, Fortisphere. And, Jonathan's just like, where are my lucky dimes? They have not been lucky this game. Seems that they are all towards the bottom of the deck. But yeah, Stephen, I couldn't see how many cards in hand there, but I think it's, yep, all right, Visions down to 2 cards in hand, whereas Jonathan has 5 and also has the Hiram on board and has another Hiram in hand. So Jonathan's definitely managed to accrue card advantage here.
He's definitely created a lot of advantage.
Yep.
But right now he's just like we're guys like we have to kind of wait on the Tamatoa to slowly build a little bit more advantage right now. So we're just kind of waiting on it. He has drawn all the cards, so he kind of has to get a move on actually trying to like create some presence.
Yeah, that's
Otherwise,
right.
he might just actually draw himself out. Like
it is not impossible, but I think by the time that they find their lucky dime or their 2 lucky dimes, they should be able to just play a character every turn, tap a dime, and get to 20 before they run out of cards.
If I had to take a guess, I think he's probably sitting around 20-ish cards right now. Yeah.
In the Inkwell?
No, just like 20-ish cards left in deck.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I think they have drawn a lot. There's the Sisu, so trying to get a bit of a move on in the law race, which, yeah, I think that removes the Hiram and shuts off part of the draw engine. The Tamatoa has 5 strength, so is not vulnerable to the Sisu. And, yeah, here Jonathan has to decide whether they want to run out of Hiram and just look for more cards, try and find that dime, or whether they have an answer in hand for this Sisu. Yeah, again, didn't get a great... I just can't remember what was in Jonathan's list, so I don't know whether they're running cards like Let It Go or Along Came Zeus that can deal with some of these bigger threats, or whether most of their removal was sort of 2 or 1 damage for more sort of anti-aggro.
So he does quest for free with the Tamatoa.
Yeah, quest for 3,
picks up the
finds a Fortisphere, draws another card.
So Fortisphere, kind of like the steel version of Popsicle.
Yep.
It will draw your card when it comes into play. It costs 1, and you can banish it and pay 1 to give a character bodyguard until the end of your opponent's next turn.
Yeah, so yeah, don't see the effect with the banish getting used too often in a lot of decks. I think most steel decks that are trying to run tempo, where bodyguards can be nice, it's usually a bit too slow. But yeah, again, Jonathan's just found a home for a lot of these cards, and there is the lucky dime that Jonathan's been looking for.
All right, time to take a read. All right.
So tap the lucky dime. Yep, still does the same thing. It's done since set 1. Right. So taps the dime. That's another 5 law. So now it is really starting to get into the danger zone for Stephen here. If Stephen doesn't have a card like Hideaway, yeah, this clock that is being presented by Jonathan is starting to look very scary.
Right, okay, cycling for another 2 cards.
Yep. So now with the dime out, I think the card that Jonathan will look for is probably Aerial Treasure Collector. It will be... Wait, maybe not, because Jonathan actually has fewer items than Stephen does at the moment, which is unlikely for this deck. But yeah, that might be something that Stephen's playing towards.
Yeah, he probably has a fistful of them in his hand. So
we're still seeing cards added to the Inkwell.
Okay, Popsicle.
There's a Popsicle. This Sapphire Steel deck, it can ramp so greedily.
Yeah, like Okay, cool. So I've definitely lost count of how much he's got.
He's approaching 20 at the very least.
Quarter of a deck, all right. So, very smooth here, just like lays it all out.
I think that was 2 lines of 6 and a line of 3. So I think we're up to 15.
Like I was about to say quarter deck, right?
Yeah, I think we got 4 to 12 on the law count with the dime tap last time.
This is crazy. It's like when just for the Ruby Sapphire players, like, oh man, this deck's even slower and more long gamey.
I know. It's like
I have to be the aggressor now.
I've only got 8 ink. This is sad. Like usually the Ruby Sapphire has a huge ink advantage in almost every matchup, but yeah, this Sapphire Steel list draws a lot of cards. Are we going to see the mana down or? Yeah, Stephen doesn't seem to have a great answer in hand for this Tamatoa, which is presenting the win on board at the moment. With the Tamatoa questing plus the activation of the dime, that would be 10 law.
So Stephen has definitely 1 ice block, so he can reduce the strength of Tamatoa, but that doesn't put it into range of anything that would hypothetically be able to banish it. Obviously, you can run the Sisu in.
Yeah, and there was a Maui here at all in hand, so could play the 5 cost, but yeah, that's a really not the trade that Stephen wants to have to make at this point.
If you need a little bit more strength to get over line, you can use your Vitality Spheres to pump up Sisu.
Or we might see if we can play a Maui and then banish one of the Vitalospheres. That puts it to 8. And yeah, that may... Oh, another ice block. Do we have some Lady Tremaine or something like that to bring it down to...
So he does presumably ice block twice.
And double Vitalosphere.
Yeah, okay,
So, yeah, I think Steven might be trying to get the McDuck's Manor out this turn. So, yeah, I think Maui was one line of play, but, yep, I think Steven's identified that playing out a character that cannot quest is just a bit too slow with the clock that Jonathan's got.
Here's also the thing, though. Like, Jonathan can just play another
Tamatoa.
Yeah, he can play another Tamatoa, and yeah, like I said, and you can just coin it straight away.
And yep, Steven just scoops it.
Scoops it up. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we may have missed a lore tick or two there, but that looked like the win on board. So yeah, really well played by Jonathan, and yeah, this is sort of what we identified with this Sapphire Steel list. You can ramp so greedily and then just refresh your hand with the whole new world. And I think that's another, that Pyro is not a card that we see very often, but because it can sing a whole new world, it's sort of got the anti-aggro component where it can challenge multiple cards in a turn. And then into these control decks, you can run it out, you can sing a whole new world, and then all of your ink is fresh, so you can then play something on that turn where you've just activated it. Because, yeah, playing 5 to play a whole new world is, yeah, you then have a handful of cards that you probably cannot play that turn, and you've just given your opponent the initiative. So you always want to find a singer for that card.
Yeah, so I think this deck is really a deck that's just decided, hey, what happens if we just go full greed? You know, like what happens if we go even slower and longer than Ruby Sapphire? And let's say we want to really find these greedy cards that will help us deal with, you know, some of the faster decks, and you know, we'll just run Fishbone Quill to sort of ink through them. And it seems like, yeah, maximum greed sometimes works, right?
Yeah.
So I guess as long as you're not playing against anything that's super fast and you don't brick, then you might be okay. So as long as you're drawing some amount of cards, then you'll be fine. But yeah, so this is crazy. I think like I would genuinely be confused. Like, so yes, Steven has definitely picked up a lot of clues and ideas of how to best play against Jonathan. Mm-hmm. But you know, sometimes like even after the game, you'll just be percolating like what's the lines?
Yeah, what could I have done in that game?
And you just get taken by surprise sometimes. Sometimes
I did see Steven does have the McDuck's Manor in the opening hand, so the game plan might just be run that out on the 4-ink turn and just try and accumulate lore and start the clock as early as possible.
But it's not like Jonathan didn't have play, so he has the Argus. So even if you send, I think it's Argus and Pyros, I think they will both be able to take out. Both be able to take out.
Yeah, that's true. You got
the that manner.
So 4 strength with the.
So they have some very high strength challengers. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of. Yeah, this
turn 1 Steven is Ice Block, and
Ice Block.
Jonathan probably turn 1 Fortisphere or Popsicle, right?
Yeah, definitely.
He's got effectively 8 different turn 1 sickles.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the nice things because. Yeah, one of the things about Ice Block is...
that's true. You also have to run Simple because you've got so many uninkables, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another... I haven't seen the big Simba, so I think this is purely in the deck just to get a body down on the board and just let you filter your hand a bit with all these uninkables. So there's a Tamatoa. I think we'll see
Sail.
Oh, Tipo. Tipo's good as well.
Not optimum, but...
Yeah, I think the small Sisu Daring Visitor is probably not a card that Steven cares about too much in this matchup, so happy to turn it into ink.
Yeah, Zelda Hours RC just gives you a little bit more ink to work with.
Yep.
Tipo's obviously Tipo creates a body, which I guess while there's Simba on board can help contest you a little bit, or just help you build a little amount of lore when it comes to it. Jonathan,
I'm not seeing a ramp card in hand here for Jonathan. I think that's a Visions on top, which looks like it's going into the Inkwell. No, I'm thinking about it. I might want to play the Visions this turn and look for a Sail or something like that to try and get their ink total going a bit. Yeah, just thinking carefully. Yeah, this is an important decision, especially if you want to ink a 2-cost card on turn 2 and then just pass. So inks the Smee and plays the Smee. Okay. There you go. All right, so going for the more sort of tempo-oriented play at the moment, which I think is...
I guess, yes.
I think if there's no ramp in hand, then this seems like a good play. So we got 1-0 on the lore count to Jonathan, and Stephen is probably pretty happy with the way that this has gone so far.
A little bit interesting. So playing Smee forces now Stephen to deal with this Smee. Otherwise, like if he lets it go, that will gain him like 2-4-6 lore. So I think Stephen's maybe just is deciding that maybe to just ignore it for now. So he started the turn with
Sail.
This is one of those turns where you're going to sail, ink, and then brawl it. Or Sisu.
Sisu, yeah.
He could have Sisu'd the Smee if he ice blocked it as well.
He needs the double ice block for that because the Daring Visitor is 1 or less.
Yep. So you can brawl with the...
Yeah, you can brawl. But Stephen's hand is down to, I think there's only 1 card in hand. So while they have been able to ramp to 5, and they have got a couple of bodies on the board, they're not particularly scary bodies for Jonathan. If Stephen can find, say, a shift Sisu and get that 3 questing out on the board, that could be nice. But
I don't think it's like shifting into Sisu is super high priority. I think,
I think they need to find some card draw here. Yeah, ideally,
you get some ramp and you get some card draw.
And this is a case where this is a game where Jonathan will be disincentivized from playing a whole new world because they have a lot of cards in hand. Their opponent has very few. So you don't want to refill your opponent's hand, especially if the cards that they draw, any Ruby Sapphire player who has played knows that often, maybe not often, but sometimes you just get a handful of uninkables and you just can't do anything with your deck. You're stuck on 5 ink, you've got a bunch of 7 and 8 cost cards that you can't put in your inkwell. And yeah, depending on what Stephen draws and what's in hand, Jonathan might just be quite content to let their opponent sit there with not a lot to do.
It's just me, but it seems like a lot of cards in Jonathan's deck are foil. Like,
yeah,
just look at them and it's like they're a slightly different hue.
Yeah, I think the Fishbones are both foil. I think the Smee is foil.
The Ice Block is foil, I think.
Twin Fire is foil.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's not surprising. I guess when you get to this, the more serious parts of the competition, a lot of these players have probably put some resources into their deck, so you'll see a lot of foils. And I mean, we saw like Din's deck with the 4 enchanters. That was such a flex. So, all right, so just deciding what to ink with the Fishbone Quill. Fishbone Quill, one of the cards, T-Po's another one where you may ink any card, which means you don't have to show the card to your opponent to prove that it's inkable. You can just put it into the inkwell face down. So Stephen, definitely looking for a wheel here, needs to find a Hiram or something along those lines. And this is again where cards like Ice Block, cards like Sisu Daring Visitor can be very clunky because you can't ink them. So if you get a lot of them in your opening hand, you can get stuck on a low amount of ink, and with these inkable cards, you're committed to them. So runs out the Shark there, prioritizing the Shark over the Hiram. There was definitely a couple of lines.
Is that Stephen's last card in hand?
Yep, Stephen's hand is now empty.
Ooh, all right, so obviously if you're Jonathan, all you do is not turn your guy sideways.
Yep, and just continue to ramp up and then play the whole new world on your terms. If Jonathan could find a Singer for a whole new world, that would really be ideal for them. So there's the Fishbone.
Yep, so he can just ramp up. He's not too afraid, even if, you know,
there's the Hiram.
Yep, all right.
So Jonathan just saying that they're not too afraid of Stephen's sort of current board. Happy to just draw some cards and see what they get.
Interesting that he banished the Fishbone.
Quill.
Like, he...
I think
didn't have any, didn't have any additional items to sort of play around with. I
think Jonathan's doesn't have a lot of fuel in hand. I think their hand is 4 cards, so probably trying to put 2 cards into the inkwell in a turn is not their priority at the moment. And Fortisphere is exactly what they were looking for. So, and there's the Pete as well. Another really nice combination. If you can find a Singer for the whole new world, if you can play your Pete and then sing a whole new world, this Ruby Sapphire list will get a lot of actions in their hand, and they will just have a very stuck hand because very few of their cards are characters. So yeah, if you can give them a handful of cards, but they're all actions, it's not too useful. All right, so
even questing for 2, going up to 2.
And there's the McDucks. So
all right, cool.
This is not looking bad for Stephen. That was a very, very handy top deck there. And we haven't seen any hideaways in Jonathan's hand.
The question is, do you quest with the Hiram to draw 2 additional cards?
I think we just saw another Hiram come to hand. So I think Jonathan might
Main
play
thing
the
is
higher.
you just don't want to feed the Maui. So
Yeah, that's right. So
you need to either have either a solution for the Maui half shark, or you have to have a way to pick up your Hiram. And I don't think he has either.
all right, so quests. So
Let's draw
probably-
2. And
yeah. So 2 to 2, and draws a couple of cards. And we do see the Tinkerbell come down, which is... Yeah, it answers the small Sisu, but that is certainly not the biggest
It
problem.
also
that
deals with
Jonathan's got.
Tipo, so it just puts the Maui.
Tipo's got the...
Tipo's got 2, yeah.
Two
There's
willpower,
one, yeah.
yep. So hasn't challenged into anything at this point. And yeah, I like the move by Steven keeping the Tipo ready. So if the Smee does quest and goes to 2 damage counters on it, then the Tipo's there and ready to answer it. And yeah, not a great looking hand here from Jonathan, trying to figure out what the best line of play is. Certainly hasn't been the explosive game that they had in the previous one, where they were able to ramp very quickly and then play the whole new worlds. Might see, yeah, is that the Visions coming down? Just to look for something.
Visions. All right, he has to dig.
Yeah, this is definitely looking good for Steven at this point. What do you think?
Definitely. Well, but still, top 5 is quite a lot. So he's having a look.
But yeah, I think this is the Ruby Sapphire's best chance is to try and win via tempo here. So I think, yeah, on that turn, Steven made the read that getting the Shark out is probably the higher tempo play than the Hiram to banish the Ice Block. So elected for that and then was rewarded when they found the mana. But yeah, if Jonathan can find some way to clear the board, then that would be very bad news for Steven.
He's thinking about inking a Simba, or he's thinking about playing the Simba to just draw it an extra card, maybe?
I think we're going to see Smee into the Inkwell here. Yeah, it's very hard. Jonathan's trying to probably figure out a way to deal with this mana, but
So you can go.
There's the let
so
it-
let's
let it go.
Okay, so let it go. Yeah, you had to.
yeah,
do that for that
makes
one.
sense.
So yeah, that's what he's thinking is what to ink in order to let it
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
that's not too bad. I don't think Steven will be too unhappy to get an additional ink there. So 2 for the mana, up to 4. So yeah, all things considered, I think that wasn't too bad of a thing for Steven because a lot of their cards are expensive. So rather than being banished, let it go puts the card into your opponent's Inkwell.
Sisu Quest
So
101.
up to 5. And yeah, ink the dragon. There's no way that Steven's going to be able to play that dragon anytime soon.
This is rough. Okay.
But Jonathan doesn't have a scary board either. We might see the Tinkerbell come down and just try and establish board control. All right, there's the draw. I think that was a Cogsworth. We've got a Pete. We've got a Hiram. None of these are doing a lot at the moment. So yeah, we might just see the Tinkerbell come down just to try and build a bit of a board presence on Jonathan's side. Steven's up to 8 ink, or is that 7? I think they're on 7 ink.
Yeah, that's on 7 at the moment.
Yeah.
And don't believe he's inked this turn yet, so potentially 8. So in this board match, you kind of just want to just keep playing.
There's the Tink.
Yeah.
Yep, so that'll put 1 damage counter on the Tipo.
Yeah. Questing for 1.
And yep, quest 1, so up to 3. Questing with the Hiram, no items to banish, so just a 1/6 body that quests for 1 at the moment.
So Jonathan probably thinking he can probably realistically there's nothing to punish him for going wide, except unless Steven top decks a be prepared. But you don't live your life assuming that your opponent's going to draw
top deck that. Yeah, I think just going wide here and yeah, what are the chances? I think Steven, I'm not sure how many B preps are in the list, but most decks will run up to 2.
So Steven gains 2 off the mana.
1 for the Ice Block. And yeah, again, this is where cards like Ice Block, uninkables, you're committed. Once you put them in your deck, if you draw them, you have to play them.
On the upside though, now if he does play a Sisu, he does have a much higher range on the Sisu because he's got multiple Ice Blocks here.
Yeah, that's true.
So Jonathan going straight to Tamatoa? No, okay. Pete and all right, so okay.
So just going very wide and questing.
Gives all your characters resist.
Quest for 6.
Call correctly.
I think I might have missed a law trigger on Steven's side with the McDucks, so it might be up to 7. But yeah, I like the game plan from Jonathan.
All right, cool. So he gets 2. It's
got a McDuck and a Hiram.
I think you just go for the Hiram, right?
I think so, but I'm not sure that they have. It's very hard to see. I think they have 4 more inks. So yeah, I think it's got to be the Hiram. Yeah, another McDucks. I don't think that Stephen can afford to race in this position.
If you play a McDuck, Jonathan just sends 3 of his guys into each one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of strength on board.
which is like not so, like his reasonable stats as well. I think the McDuck, honestly, like next turn is just like probably going to receive a whole.
Yeah,
I think you just quest for it.
And wow, Stephen just
scoops up because Jonathan
had
shows
2,
1, 2, 3,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on board.
Yeah.
So yeah, we may have missed a couple of law triggers there. It might have been the win on board, but yeah, that's just an example of when you play Ruby Sapphire. If you just ramp and ramp and ramp, you're shrinking your hand very rapidly, and then if you can't find a wheel, it is just you run out of cards and you just ramp into GG.
So definitely, this is like a textbook situation of what happens if you bring in something that's a little bit off meta. I think we've seen both in this matchup as well as Din's matchup earlier. When you bring in cards and strategies that are a little bit off meta, a lot of players just won't really know how to deal